I wasn't looking for heartbreak when I opened Facebook that morning. I was just trying to waste a few minutes before work. A little digital noise to fill the silence of my apartment, like white noise for the soul. I had my coffee in one hand and my phone in the other, mindlessly scrolling past pictures of babies, gym selfies, and vacation reels, until I stopped hard. There it was. A photo of my parents and my younger sister Tina grinning on the deck of what looked like a luxury tour bus in Iceland, all three of them bundled in thick matching white parkas, holding champagne flutes under a sky painted with the green and purple ribbons of the northern lights. The kind of photo you see on postcards, or luxury travel ads, or maybe on the vision board of someone who's never had to check their bank account before grocery shopping. The caption read, "Family goals, Northern Lights, here we come!" My stomach dropped. I stared at the picture, blinking slowly, waiting for some sort of logical explanation to rise to the surface. There wasn't one. Just 12 days ago, Mom had called crying about the electric bill. Said they were on the verge of having their power shut off if they didn't pay the past due balance by Friday. She sounded so scared. "I just don't know how we're going to get through this winter," she whispered, like the cold had already started seeping in. I wired her $600 within the hour. Before that, Dad asked for $400 for his car insurance, said it lapsed and he needed it to get to work. Before that, Tina needed help with her rent. Again. Before that, it was textbooks, groceries, co-pays. The emergencies came like clockwork. Always urgent, always poorly timed, always falling in my lap. But a luxury vacation to Iceland? With glacier tours and northern lights excursions? Not once did anyone mention that. Not once did they think to include me. I tried to tell myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was last minute. Maybe someone else paid. Maybe it was a prize they won or a surprise or arranged by someone I didn't know. But then I scrolled further. There were photos of Tina eating at a rooftop restaurant in Reykjavik. My mom at a spa, wrapped in a robe and sipping cucumber water. My dad at a brewery with the caption, "Beer, tastes better with family." Each post chipped away at whatever illusion I was still trying to hold on to. And then I saw it, the one that really hit me. It was a group selfie with all three of them, smiling so wide it almost looked painful. Tina's caption read, "This trip was overdue. So grateful to do it with the people who matter most," with a little heart emoji at the end. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until it caught in my throat. My coffee had gone cold. My hand was still clenched around the mug, but I couldn't feel it. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even blink. I just felt hollow. "Yeah," he finally said. "We figured we deserved a break. It's been a rough year, you know." "Sure," I said quietly. "And I guess I'm not family enough for this one?" That did it. A beat passed, and then he said it. Calm, cold, as if he'd practiced it. "Why would we bring the outsider?" I blinked. Outsider. Not the one who bailed them out when their water heater broke. Not the one who paid Tina's tuition for 3 semesters even after she dropped out. Not the one who skipped her own vacation so they could afford theirs. Outsider. I didn't argue, didn't defend. I just let the words sink in, like water finding cracks in a foundation. Then I said, "Noted," and hung up. Not out of anger, out of clarity. It's strange how 2 syllables can carry a lifetime. All the missed birthdays, all the one-sided sacrifices, every time I stood in the wings so Tina could have the spotlight, every time I told myself love meant giving even when no one gave back, like someone had scooped the air out of my chest and replaced it with static. I don't know what compelled me to call my dad. Maybe I was hoping for a slip-up, an awkward laugh, something that would at least make me feel like I hadn't imagined being a part of this family. Maybe I just wanted to hear his voice and confirm what I already knew. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Oh," he said, flat, unbothered. No, "Hello." No, "How are you?" Just that one word, like my name on his screen had been an inconvenience. "Looks like you made it on board," I said, keeping my voice even. There was a pause. Not the kind that meant surprise or guilt, just calculation. Like he was lining up what version of the truth would go down easiest. For years I thought I was part of the family unit, a silent support beam holding up the house. But in that moment, I saw the truth. They were the house, and I was the scaffolding they never planned to keep. After I hung up the phone that morning, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even move for a while. I just stared at the blank screen, the word outsider echoing in my head like a cruel mantra. But the real sting didn't come from that moment. It came from everything that led up to it. The slow erosion of trust disguised as duty. And I'd played along for years, thinking I was doing the right thing. The responsible thing. It started right after I got my first real job. I had just landed a junior analyst position at a small tech startup in Austin. It wasn't glamorous, and the pay was barely enough to cover rent on a one-bedroom apartment with a leaking ceiling, but I was proud. I felt like I was finally standing on my own 2 feet. 3 days after I moved in, my dad called. He said a freak hailstorm had damaged part of the roof. Insurance wasn't covering it. They needed help. Just a little boost to patch things up. $3,000 later, I found myself eating canned soup and postponing buying a couch for my new apartment. They said they'd pay me back. They didn't. Next came the hospital bill. Mom's sudden episode that left her in the ER for a night. I didn't ask too many questions. Just wired $2,500 to her account and told her to rest. I assumed there would be a receipt. There wasn't. Then there was Tina, my little sister with the big dreams and the even bigger excuses. She enrolled in community college but dropped out after the first semester. Mental health, she said. Then re-enrolled, dropped out again, and again. Somehow I paid tuition for all 3 attempts, along with her books, her apartment near campus, and her Uber rides when the bus felt sketchy. When her laptop fried after she spilled iced coffee on it mid-panic attack over a paper she never wrote, guess who ordered her a new one overnight? I did it all because I believed that's what good daughters did, good sisters. I thought if I held everyone up, they'd eventually find their footing, maybe even thank me. They didn't. The pattern was always the same. A call, a crisis, a tearful voice saying, "We just need a little help, sweetie. You're the only one we can count on." And I answered, every time. At first I believed them, then I started noticing things. Mom still went to the salon every 3 weeks like clockwork. Fresh highlights, new nails, a different person every Facebook photo. Dad upgraded his golf clubs last spring. Tina had the latest iPhone and a gym membership, and a monthly subscription to some organic smoothie cleanse service. Meanwhile, I was rationing groceries. I hadn't taken a vacation in 6 years. I worked overtime to cover my student loans and still drove a car that shuddered every time I hit 50 on the highway. And through it all, they never once acted like I was doing anything special. No thank you. No appreciation, just assumptions. They called it helping the family. But what it really meant was, I was funding their lifestyle. I was their backup plan and their emotional ATM, their invisible lifeline, all without consent. The worst part? I bought into it. Because when you grow up in a household where silence is safer than asking questions, where love is measured by usefulness, you learn to equate sacrifice with worth. I didn't want to admit it at the time, but I was chasing approval I was never going to get. If I kept showing up, kept fixing everything, maybe one day I'd finally be enough. Maybe they'd see me. Instead, they just saw how far I could stretch, how deep I could dig. And when I started to feel the cracks, when I timidly suggested maybe Tina could look for a job or Dad could sell his golf gear, the response was laughter. Literal laughter. Dad once said, "You're not married. No kids. What else are you going to spend your money on?" Tina called me uptight when I asked if she could cover her own phone bill for once. It became clear. They didn't see my help as a gift. They saw it as obligation. My life didn't count unless it was in service of theirs. The moment I realized that, something inside me started to shift. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect. And they had none for me. So when I saw that photo, the 3 of them in Iceland, toasting under the northern lights, dressed in matching parkas while I wore the same coat I'd owned since college, it wasn't just betrayal. It was confirmation. They had the money. They had the time. They had the energy. What they didn't have was the decency to even pretend I mattered. They never invited me because they never saw me as one of them. I was the outsider, not by accident, but by design. I didn't sleep well that night. Even after hanging up on my dad, even after telling myself I was done being surprised, my body didn't believe it. My mind kept running laps around that one word, outsider. And no matter how tightly I wrapped the blankets around me, I couldn't shake the cold that settled in my bones. By morning I hadn't cried. Not once. But my chest felt bruised, like I'd been holding something too heavy for too long. That's when the voicemail came. I was brushing my teeth when I saw the missed call notification, a familiar number lit up on my screen. I hit play, mostly out of reflex. "Hi, sweetheart," my mother's voice chirped, light and breezy, like she hadn't just co-authored a betrayal. "Hope you're having a good morning. We were wondering if you could send the rest soon. The ship's Wi-Fi is bad, and we need to book the glacier hiking tour before it fills up. Love you." I stood there, toothbrush in hand, foam gathering at the corners of my mouth as the words crawled through my ear like poison. The rest. Book the glacier hiking tour. It was like I'd stepped into a parallel universe, one where guilt didn't exist, and manipulation came sugar-coated. They were still on board, still enjoying themselves, still spending the money I'd given them under the pretense of keeping the heat on this winter. And now they wanted more. I rinsed my mouth, walked over to my desk, and opened my laptop with fingers that were strangely steady. There had been a moment, months ago, when Dad had said something about needing a card to temporarily place the cruise deposit. His credit line had hit a snag, apparently, and it was just a formality. "You'll get a receipt and everything, promise." I had forwarded him one of my travel cards. Low limit, rarely used, just enough to hold a hotel or flight. I didn't think about it again, until now. I logged into the cruise line site and searched my inbox for the booking confirmation. It didn't take long to find it. Subject line: "Your reservation is confirmed. Carter Family and Northern Lights Expedition." I clicked in. The guest name? Rachel Carter. Billing address? My apartment. Card used? Mine. All of it, every reservation, every excursion, every perk, was tied to me. Not just the deposit. The final balance, too. There at the bottom of the invoice was the charge I had authorized 3 weeks ago, after Mom had recalled about a supposed plumbing emergency. "We're backed up in 2 rooms, she'd cried. "I don't know how we'll afford a plumber. We're just so tired." I remember whispering, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." And I had. I always did. But now, looking at the cold proof in black and white text, something snapped clean inside me. Not cracked, not bruised, snapped. I opened a new tab and logged into the cruise portal using the credentials from the receipt. To my surprise, I had full account access. Billing, guest services, everything. I hovered over the Manage Account section, then clicked into Payment Options. A live chat window popped up. "Hi, my name is Maya. How can I assist you today?" I stared at the blinking cursor for a moment. Then I typed, "I believe there has been unauthorized use of my payment method. I'd like to freeze all onboard activity pending a billing review." Maya responded quickly. Courteous, professional, efficient. Within 15 minutes, the account was locked. 2 hours later, I received a brief follow-up message confirming that, due to payment discrepancies, onboard privileges associated with the cabin have been temporarily suspended. I sat back in my chair and let out a long breath. Not relief exactly, but something close, like loosening a belt that had been cinched too tight for too long. I didn't check my phone again until sunset. The first thing I saw wasn't a message. It was a video, posted by a stranger on TikTok. The caption read, "Some family drama, unfolding on deck 5. I hit play. There, in the grainy, zoomed-in footage, was my mother, mid-sob, being gently but firmly escorted through the main lobby by security. My father trailed behind her, face red, shouting something I couldn't make out. Tina stood to the side, jaw clenched, arms crossed like she wanted to vanish. The camera panned to a group of onlookers, whispering, gawking. I didn't laugh. I didn't feel victorious. I just watched. Quietly. The same way I'd watched for years, when they struggled, when they lied, when they smiled and said they loved me while lining their pockets with my effort. Only this time, I wasn't the one cleaning up the mess. This time, I was the cause of it. The phone buzzed again. And again. Messages poured in. At first panicked, then accusatory, then downright venomous. I silenced them all. Let the noise climb around me like wildfire while I stayed perfectly still in the eye of the storm. But then one notification made me pause. It was a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. Area code from the port city. I tapped it open, put it on speaker. "This is Officer Ramirez with the Port Authority. We need to speak with you regarding a financial matter involving your family. Please return this call at your earliest convenience." I didn't move. Not because I was afraid, because I was finally still. For the first time in my life, I wasn't patching the wound. I was letting it bleed. And it felt, strangely, like healing. I didn't expect them to show up at my door. I thought the voicemail from the Port Authority would be the last note in their unraveling symphony of chaos. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd back off, lick their wounds, and retreat into silence like they always did when things got too messy to control. But control had never been the point. Power was. And when you take power away from people who think they're entitled to it, they don't disappear. They come for you. The knock came at dusk. Sharp, repetitive, like someone trying to shatter the door from the outside in. I didn't move right away. I stood in the hallway, staring at the handle, waiting to see if I'd flinch. I didn't. I opened the door to find all three of them standing there. Dad in front, fists clenched, Mom behind him, eyes red but dry, and Tina off to the side, arms crossed, jaw tight like she'd been practicing her part in the mirror. "You think this is funny?" my dad snapped before I could say a word. I leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. "No," I said, "I think it's overdue." "You humiliated us," Mom choked out. "They escorted us off the ship in front of everyone." Her voice cracked on the word everyone, like she expected that to matter to me, like shame was a currency they could spend to win me back. "Probably felt a little like being called an outsider by your own father," I said evenly. Dad stepped forward, nostrils flaring. "We're your family." "No," I said, cutting him off. "You're people I've been sending money to out of guilt. That's not the same thing." Tina scoffed. "You've always been bitter," she said. "You think paying for things makes you important? Makes you better than us?" "No," I said calmly, "but it means I get to stop funding my own disrespect." She rolled her eyes. "You're just mad because we didn't include you." I tilted my head. "Numbers, I'm done because you never intended to." There was a beat of silence, a crack in the script they'd clearly rehearsed. That's when I turned, walked into the apartment, and came back with the folder. A thick, worn manila envelope with papers neatly organized inside. I set it on the coffee table and opened it slowly, deliberately, as they watched. "What's that supposed to be?" Dad asked. "Receipts," I said. "Every dollar I've sent, wired, Venmo'd, covered, or forgiven over the last 5 years." Mom's face paled as I flipped through page after page. Printouts, emails, screenshots, bank statements. Tina's tuition, 3 semesters, $11,200. Rent near campus, $7,800. Emergency dental bill, $950. Replacement laptop, $1,300. Mom's ER visit, $2,400. Roof repair, $3,000. Utility bills, at least $4,500. I paused, letting the sound of paper echo around the room like a drumbeat. Total, $61,074. Mom looked at me like she didn't recognize me. "You kept track?" "No," I said. "I started 2 weeks ago. When I realized this wasn't a mistake, it was a plan." Dad scoffed. "So what? What do you want? A check?" "An apology?" I met his eyes, steady and unblinking. "I want you to leave and never ask me for anything again." The room went still. Tina looked like she was about to explode. My mother opened her mouth, but no sound came out. And then, like a plot twist no one saw coming, the side gate creaked open. Footsteps on the gravel, a shadow approaching the porch. I turned just as the screen door swung forward. "Aunt Carla!" I blinked. She walked in like she owned the ground beneath her feet, a stack of papers in one hand and her phone in the other. Her expression wasn't angry. It was resolved. "I tried to warn you," she said, glancing toward my parents. "He's not the problem, you are." "What the hell are you doing here?" Dad barked. "I'm doing what someone should have done a long time ago." She stepped past them into the living room, placing a second folder next to mine. "I saw the messages, the ones you sent the rest of the family, about how this cruise was your final ask, how you were going to ghost her afterward." I froze. Carla looked at me, her eyes suddenly soft. "They said you were becoming too controlling, that you'd served your purpose. Your mother said she'd block you the moment the final transfer came through." I turned to Mom, but she wouldn't meet my gaze. My knees didn't buckle, but they wanted to. All this time, all the guilt and the emergencies, the manipulations, they weren't flukes. They were rehearsed. "You were going to cut me off," I said slowly, "after I paid for everything." "It wasn't like that," Mom whispered. "Then what was it like?" The silence that followed was deafening. Carla laid down the final blow. "They even tried to loop me in. Told me to tell you Tina needed surgery. Said it'd make you pay faster." I sat down. Not out of weakness, but exhaustion. For years I believed I wasn't enough, that if I just gave more, helped more, maybe one day I'd belong. But the truth was simpler. I wasn't family. I was an accountant, a convenience, a wallet with feelings, and I was done. The quiet didn't last long. I had hoped foolishly that maybe the confrontation at my apartment would mark some kind of finish line. That once the truth was out in the open, laid bare by receipts and betrayal, they'd retreat into whatever corner of shame they deserved. But people like that don't retreat. They reload. By the next morning, my inbox was full. It started with a message from my aunt in Florida, then a cousin I had spoken to since high school, then another, and another. Some were polite, veiled in faux concern. Hey, just checking in. Heard there was some kind of misunderstanding on the cruise? But most weren't. Wow, can't believe you'd do something like that to your own parents. Was it really worth humiliating them? I get that you're angry, but revenge? That's a next level cold. The worst came from an uncle who hadn't sent me a birthday card in 15 years. Your mom is devastated. Your dad said you planned this, that you waited until they were out of the country to pull the rug out from under them. No one asked why they used my money. No one asked how a grown woman, me, ended up paying for a $10,000 vacation she wasn't even invited on. They didn't want facts. They wanted a villain. And I was convenient. It hit me slowly, like bruises blooming under the skin long after the blow. And this wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about image. My family wasn't scrambling to make things right. They were working overtime to make sure no one questioned their version of the story. They were painting me as unhinged, emotional, dangerous, and people were believing them. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until a friend from work sent me a message. Hey, random, but did you know Tina told people you've been in therapy for control issues? Like, she said you're obsessed with tracking everything and can't let things go. My hands went numb. It wasn't just lies. It was surgical. They weren't trying to hurt me. They were trying to isolate me, make me seem unreliable, dramatic, mentally unstable, the kind of person whose side no one takes. Not because they're wrong, but because they're too much. That was the real damage. Not the frozen cruise account, not the shouting match in my living room, not even the years of financial drain. It was this. The quiet undoing of everything I'd spent years building, my reputation, my relationships, my sense of self. Suddenly I questioned every conversation I had in the past month, every smile I got at work, every interaction with extended family. Had they been talking behind my back this whole time? Had they always seen me as the ticking time bomb, the weirdo, the one with too many boundaries and not enough forgiveness? The worst part, for a few hours, I started to believe them. Maybe I was dramatic. Maybe I had taken it too far. Maybe I should have just let it go, eaten the loss as usual and kept the peace. But then I remembered the silence every time I said no, the silence every time I asked for help, the silence when I wasn't useful. And suddenly the shame began to loosen its grip, because people who care about you don't disappear when you draw a boundary. They don't turn your honesty into ammunition. They don't whisper about your sanity just because you finally stop giving. This wasn't my failure, it was theirs. I just happened to be the first one who stopped playing the game, but it didn't make the loneliness any easier. My phone, once full of group chats and weekend plans, now sat silent on the table. Notifications had slowed to a trickle, and when they did come, they carried weight. Gossip disguised as sympathy, updates I never asked for, apologies that weren't really apologies. I went days without hearing from anyone I didn't already distrust, and that silence, it wasn't peaceful anymore. It felt like exile, like someone had flipped a switch and I'd vanished from the map, even though I was right here. Breathing, aching, standing in the middle of my own apartment like it was unfamiliar terrain. They'd taken so much already. And now, without lifting a finger, they were taking everything else. But here's the thing about exile. It gives you distance. And distance lets you see clearly. I began to understand something brutal and freeing. I'd never really belonged to them. Not the way I thought. Because belonging isn't about blood. It's not about who calls you daughter or sister or niece. It's about who protects you when you're vulnerable. Who tells the truth even when it's inconvenient. Who refuses to let the world rewrite your character into something ugly and small. I didn't have that. I never did. And maybe, just maybe, that meant it was time to stop trying to be understood by people who were committed to misunderstanding me. The call came 2 days later. I just returned from the grocery store, trying to live like a normal person again, whatever that meant, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I let it ring the first time, then again. The third time I answered, more annoyed than anything else. "This is Officer Ramirez with the Port Authority," the voice said. Calm, professional, tight, like he was carefully choosing each word. "We spoke briefly last week. I'm calling to follow up on a financial matter involving your family." My fingers curled around the edge of the countertop. "What kind of matter?" He hesitated, just long enough to set off every internal alarm. "Your parents and your sister have submitted a report," he said. "They allege that you used their personal information to access and then manipulate their cruise account, resulting in the cancellation of services without consent." My brain stalled. "Wait, what?" "They claim you committed financial fraud by impersonating them to interfere with their travel plans," he continued, his voice steady. "They're seeking a full refund from the cruise line, citing sabotage." Sabotage. I opened my mouth to argue, to scream, but nothing came out. My chest was too tight. I blinked, trying to process it. I booked it. I paid for it. The account is under my name, my card," I finally said, my voice brittle. "That's what the cruise line confirmed," Officer Ramirez replied. "But the report they filed complicates things. We'll need an official statement from you, in person." He gave me a time, a location. I wrote it down with numb fingers. By the next morning I was sitting in a small, beige-walled office, accompanied by Marcus, a lawyer friend who had once jokingly called my family a Greek tragedy awaiting to implode. His presence now felt less like a joke and more like armor. Officer Ramirez greeted us, expression unreadable. He laid a folder on the table, thick with documents. "The cruise company was already conducting an internal review when the account was frozen," he explained. "Your family filed a dispute to reverse the entire payment after using the service for nearly 3 days. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "So they were trying to get a full refund after enjoying the trip?" Ramirez nodded. "That's why the cruise line escalated it. They're pursuing a countersuit for breach of agreement and attempted transactional fraud." I let that sink in. My family hadn't just lied to the police. They had tried to scam the cruise company, and somehow still managed to make me the villain in their story. "Here's where it gets more complicated," Ramirez said. He slid the folder towards us. "The company pulled server logs from the ship's onboard Wi-Fi. Your family used your name to access their guest accounts. And during that time, these messages were recorded." I opened the folder with shaking hands. At the top were screenshots, dated, time-stamped. "Tina. Once she pays, we ghost. Mom. Let her feel useful. We block her after the final transfer. Dad. If she finds out, we say it was an accident. Miscommunication." I couldn't breathe. These weren't just flippant texts. They were the blueprint of betrayal. They'd planned it, all of it, every tearful call, every desperate plea for just a little help. Every crisis I'd been pulled into like it was urgent and unfixable unless I fixed it was part of a script, a campaign to drain me dry, then cut me off once they had no more use for me, and they were going to pretend it never happened. They were going to vanish me. I pushed the papers away, palms sweating. This is premeditated," Marcus said quietly, more to himself than anyone. Ramirez didn't disagree. "They didn't just use your card. They used your name, your address, your payment details, and your trust. Then they turned around and filed a false report accusing you of fraud." He paused, then added, "And that's not all." He pulled another printout from the folder. I recognized it instantly, not because I'd seen it before, but because of the sick twist in my stomach that accompanied it. It was an email from Tina, sent to someone named Darren. Darren was in HR at my company. I read it once. Then again. "You work with Rachel, right? Just a heads up, she's been acting kind of erratic lately. Might want to keep an eye on her. There's been some concerning stuff. Might not be stable." "She tried to get me fired," I whispered. "She really tried to get me fired." Ramirez nodded. "We can't prove intent, but the pattern is clear. It wasn't just about taking from you. It was about discrediting you, isolating you, severing every lifeline until you had no one left." I sat back in my chair, everything inside me hollowing out. I had always known something was wrong. The way they made me feel small when I set boundaries. The way they turned cold when I asked questions. The way their gratitude was always conditional and expired the moment I paused. But this wasn't dysfunction. It was cruelty, systemic, deliberate, and cold. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even look at Marcus when he put a gentle hand on my arm. I just stared at the messages, evidence of how easily they erased me, and realized I wasn't mourning a family anymore. I was burying a fiction I had written for years. I didn't reply to Officer Ramirez that day. I didn't ask what would happen next, or whether my family would face legal consequences. I didn't want follow-ups. I didn't need justice, not the kind that came from courtrooms or statements. I needed distance. The last thread had already snapped the moment I read Tina's email, the moment I saw her try to reach into my life one last time, not to ask for help, not to apologize, but to destroy what little I'd built outside of them. She had messaged someone in my company's HR department, a guy I barely knew beyond a few awkward elevator rides, and tried to suggest I was unstable, that I needed to be watched, that I might be a problem. I didn't respond to her. Not in words, not in rage. I didn't send a single "how could you" text or try to salvage the remnants of a sibling bond that never really existed. I did something far quieter. I went home, opened my laptop, and wrote my resignation letter. I didn't explain. Just a short, professional note. Thank you for the opportunity. I've decided to take a step back for personal reasons. Then I packed. I had already been toying with the idea of moving. My lease was ending soon, and the apartment had started to feel like a ghost town, filled with echoes of late-night phone calls, financial panic, and emotional obligations disguised as love. So I put everything I owned into 3 suitcases and 5 cardboard boxes. It was surprisingly easy. When your life has been consumed by other people's emergencies, you don't accumulate much of your own. A day later, I turned in my keys and walked away. No goodbye party, no farewell drinks, just the sound of gravel under my shoes as I loaded the last box into the trunk of my rented car. I moved to a city 3 hours away. Nothing special. A quieter place, smaller streets, a landlord who actually showed up when the faucet leaked, a coffee shop where they learned my name after day 3. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not my coworkers, not old friends, and definitely not my family. I changed my number, deleted old emails, blocked every contact I should have blocked years ago, even made a new social media profile, under a nickname only one person in my life ever used. For the first time, silence wasn't exile. It was protection. 1 week after the move, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name written in rushed, uneven script I recognized instantly. Tina. Inside was a single line, scribbled in blue ink across torn notebook paper. You did this to yourself. No hello, no explanation, no apology, just that. I stared at it for a long time. I could have torn it up, could have burned it, flushed it, crumpled it into something small and unimportant, but I didn't. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed a magnet shaped like a cactus, cheap, touristy, from a gas station at Pit Stop, and pinned the note to my fridge, right in the center. Not as a warning, as a trophy. Because this wasn't a threat. It was a confession. It was proof that I had finally stopped being who they trained me to be, that I had stepped so far out of their reach they couldn't manipulate me, couldn't guilt me, couldn't make me feel sorry for demanding peace. It was the moment I knew I'd won, not because I'd hurt them back, but because they could no longer hurt me. I looked at the paper every morning for a week, read the words, felt nothing. And that, more than anything, told me I'd made it. It's been 6 months, and sometimes when the wind moves just right through the narrow streets of this small town, I forget I ever lived another life. The new apartment isn't much. 1 bedroom, scuffed floors, a couch that creaks when I sit too fast. But it's mine, paid for with my money, under my name, no one else's name on the lease or on the Wi-Fi or hidden in the fine print of an invoice I never saw coming. The silence here doesn't ache. It breathes. No more midnight phone calls labeled urgent. No more text messages from Tina that begin with, "I hate to ask, but..." Or from Mom that end with, "You're the only one we can count on." No more trembling every time my phone buzzes, expecting a crisis, a guilt trap, a new hole I have to plug with parts of myself. Now, when my phone lights up, it's the local bakery offering me a coupon, or the boxing gym reminding me of class, or a friend I've made here just checking in. I sleep through the night. Not phone on the chest sleep, not half alert in case someone needs you sleep. Real sleep. Deep, dreamless healing. I started writing again. Nothing fancy, just thoughts. A journal I keep by the window, pages filled with quiet victories. Day 12, didn't feel responsible for anyone's chaos. Day 27, said no and didn't apologize after. Day 43, laughed, out loud, alone, just because it felt good. I joined a local boxing class, not because I wanted to fight, but because I needed to feel the impact. To feel the ground under my feet, the resistance in my body, the reminder that I exist in more than just service to others. There's something deeply satisfying about hitting a bag that doesn't flinch, doesn't cry, doesn't twist your words into wounds. It just absorbs. It just holds, and it lets you let go. The instructor calls me Quiet Thunder. I like that. Some days I still hear their voices. Tina's sneer, Dad's laugh, Mom's sigh. But they echo now, faint, like sounds underwater, nothing sharp enough to pierce. And then there are days like today. The mail came late. I wasn't expecting anything, but there it was. A pale envelope with elegant handwriting I didn't recognize. No return address, just Rachel Carter written with a careful hand. I opened it at the kitchen counter. Inside was a folded sheet of stationery and a note written in blue ink. You don't know me. I'm Officer Ramirez's wife. He told me what you did, not just what your family did to you, but what you did in response. He doesn't usually talk about cases, but he couldn't stop talking about yours. He said, this woman didn't just protect herself, she reclaimed her life. I just wanted you to know. Walking away takes more strength than staying. Most people don't make it out, but you did. Some of us are watching. With respect, Marlon R. I didn't realize I was crying until the paper blurred. Not loud sobs, not the kind of weeping that begs for release. Just quiet tears that made their way down like rain rolling down old window panes. Gentle, persistent, a cleansing. I stood there for a long time, letter in hand, then walked over to the fridge. Next to the crumpled note Tina had sent, you did this to yourself. I pinned this one. 2 scraps of paper, one full of poison, the other proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't imagined the neglect, the manipulation, the betrayal, that my healing wasn't invisible. Someone saw me, not because I screamed, not because I made a scene, but because I walked. Because I chose peace over performance, boundaries over obligation, self-respect over silence. I looked at the fridge, at the contrast between the 2 notes, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not a bitter smile, not a smile that masks hurt. A real one. Warm, quiet. And when I spoke, it was only to myself and to the ghost of the girl who had stayed far too long at a table where she was only ever served scraps. I didn't burn the bridge, I just walked away from the fire. Some betrayals don't leave bruises. They don't scream. They don't slam doors. They just quietly rearrange the truth until you start questioning your own worth. Rachel didn't grow up hated. She grew up used, rewarded for silence, praised for giving, conditioned to believe that being the helper meant being loved. Until one day, the asking never stopped, and the love never came. What she finally learned is something many of us take years to understand. Loyalty without boundaries isn't love, it's servitude. And family? It's not just the people who share your name. It's the people who show up when you have nothing to give, who don't ask you to bleed just to feel close, who don't punish you for stepping out of the role they assigned you. Rachel didn't burn the bridge. She just saw the fire and chose not to stay inside. So if you've ever been made to feel like the outsider, if your love was used but never returned, if you were only seen when needed and discarded when inconvenient, ask yourself, who would you be if you stopped proving your worth to people who never deserved it?